This year, 2023, we are seeing quite a lot of releases of new IM into the market, almost on daily basis, which is crazy. And in fact, the majority of them seems to focus on hybrid IMs, multiple drivers, and even dynamic drivers, some with switches. But I also noticed that there's not much of magnetic planar being released recently. So when Hidizs announced the Kickstarter program for their first ever magnetic planar, I was excited, and in fact I already have one here with me, which is the MP145. So let's just have a look at the configuration and the spec for this MP145. So as you can see here, this is a big IM, okay, and I will talk more about it after this. It looks like a whale, okay, and in fact this is a semi-open metal shell IM with single magnetic planars at the size of 14.5 mm, and the impedance rating is at 30 ohm with the sensitivity of 104 dB, which is fairly good for a magnetic planar. And you look at this lovely cable here. This is 6N silver plated crystal copper, fanciful. Inside the box, you're also going to get this set of silicone tips, which I find very useful. In fact, there's 3 types of them, namely vocal ear tips, balance ear tips, and bass ear tips. For my own usage, I have found that I was able to use this balance ear tip, and in fact I like it a lot. And the entirety of my review in this video will be based on usage of this balance ear tip, medium size, okay. And aside from that, you see here this small box, very interesting box, and what you're going to find inside is in fact interchangeable nozzles, okay. These are practically sound tuning nozzle with 3 different type of density. So the silver one here being the one which is just the mesh, no dampening at all. The gold one, which is currently attached here, right, is the one which is stock, somewhere in between, and the red one being the one which is with the thickest dampening. So the sound emitted from these 3 different type of nozzle are actually different, and I will talk about it after this as well. So let's just have a look how easy it is to change the nozzle, just like that. Take out the tips and then screw it in, simple, okay. Reattach the tips back. And as for the size itself, like I mentioned, this is very big, but to tell you what, this is not the only one, or not the first big size IM which I have come across. Let me show you this, okay. And in fact, in the market right now, we have something even bigger, like this Gold Planar GL20, which is a 28 mm magnetic planar. That is definitely way bigger than this, okay. And in fact, we also have here Muse Hi-Fi Power, which is an IM which I reviewed late last year. It is in fact practically identical to this MP145 in terms of size and dimension, but perhaps this MP145 being a full metal unit is slightly heavier, okay. And then the largest of them all, of course, this Hidizs LCD i4, which is definitely way bigger than this, wider too, okay. So as I said, this is definitely not the first time. The key thing is that I know the question that you'll be asking is that despite the size, how does it feel wearing this kind of IM? Let me just show you this, okay. It's just so easy. Here, the ergonomic, the shape of it, just like that. Done. Okay, I just adjust it a bit, and I must say that despite the huge size, because of the ergonomic design which has been thoughtfully, machined, or should I say engraved here, it is in fact quite comfortable. I have been able to wear this MP145 for up to 6 hours for gaming, and I do not feel any kind of fatigue or any kind of negative element to the usage itself. So perhaps the weight need time to get used to because this is all metal, but aside than that, it is definitely no issue at all for me. Now let's talk about driving this MP145. This is a magnetic planar after all, and I think all of us can agree that magnetic planar usually can be a bit picky with the kind of partner you attach them to. For example, right, the first time when I attached this MP145 to my phone here, which is Sony Xperia 1, not a very powerful source, 1 VRMS only, perhaps even less, and with just around 35 milliwatt of power per channel, I am happy to say that I was able to use this MP145 at casual listening volume around 75% out of 100. So definitely that is a good thing. I think the 104 dB of sensitivity does help. So I was able to use it. But one of the main reasons you want to use a magnetic planar is because this magnetic planar can always scale better with more power. For example, if you are already invested into powerful dongles or DAC or amp like this, what I have right now, especially spending my time listening to this MP145 with this Centrance DACport HD and even this Hidizs FC6 and a few other dongles which I have here. And in fact, I have been spending quite a lot of time in the last 2 days with this Burson Audio Playmate 2, which offer crazy amount of power at around almost 3000 milliwatt of power per channel at 32 ohm. That is where the real prowess of this MP145 will be evident. Alright, let's just talk about the most important subject of them all for this MP145, the sound itself. How does it sound like? Where do I start? This thing is amazing, okay? Mind-blowing, in fact. Alright, done. Sorry about that. Okay, jokes aside, okay, let's just have a look here. I have actually jotted down some of my observation on my note. I try to simplify it. So let's just talk about the cons itself first. Let's just get the elephant out of the room first. And remember, I mentioned earlier, the tuning nozzle, which you can change. It is absolutely critical to find out which nozzle will work for you, because these 3 nozzles will produce different type of sound. I have tested all 3 of them, and I must say that while using this silver type, which is just the mesh, no dampening at all, I found the sound to be a bit aggressive and in fact a bit spicy to my ears. Even for somebody who loves sparkly treble, I think I am even hearing some sort of a pinna glare on the upper frequency region between the upper mid-range to the treble itself. So in fact, it is a bit euphonic and bright, so it is a no-go for me to use this silver nozzle. And when I switch to the red one, which is the exact opposite of the silver nozzle, in fact, I am losing a bit of resolution now. It is kind of a bit subdued, especially with the imaging and the resolution itself. Yes, it sounds smoother and softer now, but again, I don't like it. So at the end of the day, I ended up switching back to this gold nozzle, which is currently attached to this IM now. And that is the one which I will talk about. Now that I have the tips, the nozzle, all dialed in to use with this MP145, let's just have a look at some of the highlight which I am sharing with you on screen right now. And in fact, I did mention I am super impressed with this MP145 from the get-go, even when attached to my weak phone here, which is Sony Xperia 1, and even more so when I scale it up with power with this Burson Audio Playmate 2 and some of my dongles here. It is the kind of sound which is easy for me to love. The reason is that because it reminds me a lot to this all-time favorite of mine, which is Shure KSE 1500. Now, this is not a magnetic planar. This is in fact an electrostatic IM. But this is to me perfection when it comes to anything that produce sound. I have yet to find anything that can match the sort of sound quality coming from this KSE 1500. But this MP145 does sound very close, at least to my ear. So the way I look at it, right, first, let's just have a look at the dynamic presentation. You see, one simple way for me to describe is that it is simply phenomenal with how MP145 present the dynamic from one end to another end, the entire range of the dynamic extension itself. It is just simply very fluid. In fact, it is analytical, and at the same time, it is organic and smooth. Very, very polished, in fact, the entire range of the presentation itself. And most importantly, right, The dynamic transient itself, it appears like airy, you know, as if there's some sort of, like, say, suspension, or should I say spring in the sound itself. So it's kind of like lightweight at the same time, but rich. So definitely it is pretty much similar to the kind of quality that I'm hearing from this KSE 1500. And as for the tuning itself, perhaps the main difference between these two is that this MP145 is tuned for a traditional V sound curve. So which means that I am hearing a pronounced upper frequency and also pronounced lower frequency and slightly subdued mid-range. Whereas this KSE 1500 is the blue sound curve, which means that it look like that. Okay, and let's just talk about the timbre itself. Again, the similarities there. One of the key things which I would consider as being important to me when it comes to IEM is that the timbre. So this is definitely something which I consider as being organic and natural sounding. It is not exactly neutral, but the most important thing is that it does not sound digital to my ears. Looking a bit closer at the mid-range itself, I mentioned just now that this MP145 being tuned as a traditional V, it is expected that the presentation, the staging of the mid-range would appear a bit recessed. But that is not a big deal for me, because the key thing is that the mid-range itself sounded neutral and natural to my ears. I do not sense any kind of coloration. I do not sense any kind of warming effect to the sound itself. And in fact, I listen to the vocals, male and females, even the instrument. It is definitely realistic sounding, believable. So definitely that is a huge plus to my ears. And when we talk about upper frequency, now I just love the kind of upper frequency performance from this MP145. First, it has a lot of air to the presentation itself. Despite being energetic and sparkly, I do not sense any kind of offensive element to the sound itself, because the decay stage, it is well extended, yet at the same time it is super smooth. You know, the focus there is very well balanced between crispness and smoothness. And when we look at the lower frequency, and perhaps this is another element which I love as well. Typically, I am not the kind of person who enjoy big bass, but when I listen to this, definitely I would say that the best performance of this MP145 is among some of the best which I have heard so far. You know, the mid bass, the sub bass, very well balanced. You know, they do not interfere with each other. The mid bass itself, despite being punchy and commanding, does not interfere with the lower mid range, and it is definitely very fast. You know, boom, and then the decay is very smooth when it transition into the sub bass region. So if you love bass, you would probably love this as well. Moving on to technicalities, the biggest appeal of this MP145, speed. Yes, this is a speed demon. Again, I bring this KSE 1500 here. This is an IM with the fastest transient on earth which I have ever listened to, and this MP145 comes very close. What I'm trying to say is that, first, when we talk about speed, we are talking about PRAT, pace, rhythm, and tempo. Alright, it sounded very solid to my ears. You know, there's no hint of being sluggish. You would not hear any kind of congestion, no matter how complex the composition of the music itself is. So the layering, the separation, everything sounded very crisp. In fact, while being analytical and crisp, it does not sacrifice on the element of musicality. Another element of technicalities, soundstage. You see here, because of this semi-open design implemented to this MP145, without a doubt, this is one of the widest sounding, open sounding IM available in the market right now, which I have tested so far. And in fact, it is quite comparable to my favorite, Final Audio A5000. The sound is just simply wide, open, spacious, and very airy. And to complement that wide open soundstage, surprisingly, despite being a single driver, right, it is very holographic as well with spatial projection. So it is in fact suitable for binaural type of music and even for gaming. I have used this for gaming and I was super impressed. Last but not least, the versatility of this MP145 when subjected to different type of music. And in fact, I have subjected this MP145 to playback of all type of music genre that I have in my library. Anything from black metal, to heavy metal, to classical, technical jazz, even modern music, Madonna, you name it, everything that I thrown at it, this MP145 sounded at home with all of them. So how does this MP145 compares against the rest of the competition in the market right now? And in fact, in order to give you a bit of perspective, let's just have a look here. All these IEM that you see here, they are all magnetic planar. And for the last 3 years, starting with Tin Hi-Fi P1 and until this now I have in my hand MP145, this is in fact my 17th magnetic planar IEM which I have ever listened to. And in fact, I would not be able to compare against all of them. Too many, that would take forever. So I'm just going to show you this. I'm just going to pick some of the best from that list. Alright. So as you can see here, yet again, you would notice that I have also placed this Shure KSE 1500 on the chart there, so that you're going to have an idea how or what perfection looks like. And in fact, looking at this MP145, it is super impressive with a total score of 93 overall. And in fact, if I were to compare it against two of the IEM, magnetic planar IEM, which I really like before this, which is Tangzu Hede and Dunu Talos, it is quite apparent that MP145 has an upper hand, especially when it comes to dynamic presentation, tone and timbre, note weight and density, and even technicalities when it comes to soundstage and spatial staging. And definitely, without a doubt, just looking at that, you would already know that this is in fact my number one right now when it comes to magnetic planar. And in fact, quite potentially my number one for this year. All in all, with everything considered, with what I have already mentioned to you earlier, this Hidizs MP145 definitely is the very best which I can think of right now when it comes to magnetic planar. And in fact, perhaps one of the very best of IEM to be released this year. The key thing is that the thing that I love so very much about this MP145 is, first, the speed. The kind of transient, the way it handles the dynamic is just simply mind-blowing. I just love speed demon IEM, which can resolve practically anything. And while doing that, it does not sacrifice on the element of musicality. It is very well balanced to be analog sounding, analytical, and yet at the same time engaging and fun enough. It does not sound clinical at all. So definitely, if you ask me what kind of magnetic planar should I go for, without doubt, this is my recommendation now.